Then we have another one by Chris Williamson. It says, why men and women are giving up on love. Let's see what they have to say.
One of the biggest levers, in fact, the single biggest predictor.
Montana, speaking of your body, I go out of rodeo early to preserve my body. Too many close calls and broken bones. That sport is rough. Well, yeah, of course it is. That's no joke.
Of your health outcomes in life are the number of close connections that you have. It's more than quitting smoking. It's more than going to the gym. It's more than stopping drinking. 50% of men say that they are not looking for a relationship.
When they say aren't looking for a relationship, do they mean I'm not looking for a woman or I'm not looking for commitment?
Not actively pursuing any kind of interaction with women.
Oh, where did we go wrong and how do we go right?
Okay, so 50.1% of women for the first time in history are mothers. There are more childless women at 30 than there are women with children, right? So for almost all of human history, more women had kids under the age of 30 than over. And now it's switched. There's a study from Morgan Stanley that says by 2040, 45% of 25 to 45-year-old women will be single and childless. If online dating was creating this perfect facilitation for relationships to start, how are we ending up with all of these?
It's interesting how a lot of men just default blame feminism. I think this downfall started before feminism, before the suffragettes. I think this is a product of capitalism and the capitalist system we live under, where the way we treat people's labor and extract maximum resources off them while paying them as little as possible for maximum profits. If you think about the setup of a corporation, it's about working a man to death while paying him the bare minimum that you can possibly pay him to extract maximum profit for the company. So the setup of corporations just being around makes it so that men have to be out of the house a majority of the time, which means the way people used to live in, say, agrarian periods, where not only was it the nuclear family, but the extended family that was together and working and tilling the land, living off of it in the farm animals. That's what you used to do. You used to go to your neighbors, you would trade your milk for their cheese, or you would trade your fruits for their corn, whatever it was. And you would barter, you would set up a little shop on the side of the road, perhaps at the farmer's market, the real local market where people used to go shop. Maybe you're good at making bread. Maybe you were good, had the best milk in town, the best cheese. And you would go over there and you set up your little stand and you would sell stuff. And that's how you guys survived. Now, in the system we live today, the man has to leave the house. Everything has gotten so expensive that the extended family no longer exists. It's just the nuclear family. And even that is not ideal. And in this situation, economically speaking, it's so expensive today just to survive by yourself. Forget a family. So people are having kids barely because it's too expensive to have a kid at all. People can't even own homes today. You've been priced out of homes. You've been priced out of almost cars now. The average car note was like $600 something, whatever it was. Nearly 700, something like that in the US. It's absolutely blown up. One of the biggest contributors to inflation was cars. So you can hardly feed yourself. You can't afford a place. You're probably sharing a place with somebody. You have a roommate. And you're expected to start a family somehow when you can hardly make it yourself? Come on, man. This is a product of the system we're living under. Yes, it was accelerated, you could say, by the gynocracy. You can say a little movement came in and then just sped things in that direction. But we were already heading there with the system we had. Yes, everything is downstream of economics. Whether women enter the workforce 80 years ago or 10 years ago, it doesn't matter. We were heading this direction just to the nature of capitalism and the structure of corporations and how we view labor. So people are saying like, it's because gynocentrism. It's because women voted for this. It's like, no, dude. The people at the top, the capitalists, were like, how can we just double up our profits? Oh yeah, let's start a movement where women want to start working and leaving the home. Oh, how do we make even more money? Yeah, after we break these homes, we're going to have people that are perpetually dependent on the system. And they're going to create a cycle of non-stop broken homes and people that need us to survive, aka the government. There you go. Ta-da! Welcome to the capitalist system we have today. The little welfare we have for broken homes, for the unemployed, for all this shit. You know, something like welfare shouldn't have to exist in the country today. That's a Band-Aid for the shortcomings of capitalism, welfare, a system like welfare. If capitalism was incredible, and I'm not trying to shit on capitalism or put it up against all the other systems, whatever. I'm just saying, here's the shortcomings we currently have that we need to fix. Another thing, when you retire and you get a pension. Pension, people call it a Ponzi scheme because you constantly need to birth people to support the prior generation that paid into the pension. If you don't have enough births, the pension system collapses. You can't even survive on your pension. It's meager peanuts over a lifelong, what would you say, commitment to working. Yeah. We're in a sick system that doesn't bode well for the family structure. Everything that's happening is because of it at the root. At the root, it's the system that's the issue. All that other stuff, like the gynocracy, all that, those are just like symptoms of the core problem. But it's easier for the monkeys to just blame something that they see surface level. Yes, it's because gynocracy. Yes, it's because the boss babes and the queens. Not knowing that this shit stems far further back. Don't ever forget, man. At the end of the day, it's a us versus them. It's the have-nots versus the haves. It's always been class warfare. Always.
Outcomes. That's a question.
What's wrong with the outcomes?
What do you mean? Why should people care about being single?
All the stats you've just said, I could look at them and say they're just sort of objectively neutral. Like there's no adverse consequence to society or the world. It's fine that people aren't having kids. It's fine that people aren't having sex. I'm playing devil's advocate here, but like what is the negative consequence of all of those outcomes that you've described in your view?
There are people for whom a life without a partner is the right choice. That's absolutely something that I'm prepared to accept. But it's not most people. It's one of the biggest levers. In fact, the single biggest predictor of your health outcomes in life are the number of close connections that you have. It's the number of friends. It's more than quitting smoking. It's more than going to the gym. It's more than stopping drinking. It's the number of close friends that you've got. And a relationship is a big close friend. Robin Dunbar says that in order to get into a relationship, you have to sacrifice 2 friendships because you can have around about 5 very close friends. If you want to get into a relationship, you need to get rid of 2 of them because there is a minimum time investment. So people that are in relationships have better health outcomes. They have onset of dementia later. They have Alzheimer's problems later on in life. They are less lonely. That seems pretty uncontroversial. And yet, both sides of the aisle, both men and women, are retreating from relationships and finding ways that they can justify this. Boss bitch culture and sort of the lean-in women's mentality, or men going their own way, and incel culture and the black pill for guys are both ways that each sex is trying to deal with the challenges that are coming out of the mating market. Both sexes are saying, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I'm finding it...
James, my favorite Gordon Gekko quote from the movie Wall Street. It's all about bucks, kid. The rest is conversation. Yeah, and what he's saying is that people are choosing they'd rather be alone. That's because inherently we understand how rotten the system is in general. We know it's broken. We have a deep natural programming that we want to be with women. Women want to be with men. We would like to start families. We want the white picket fence dream. We want to come home to kids giggling, roof over our heads, food on the table. We yearn for that. We yearn to take care of our families just like women yearn to take care of kids and be taken care of by her man and submitting. This is core programming. It will not change no matter what moronic ideology is being pushed in the mainstream today. People on a deep level understand and want this. They're craving it. However, the system is so broken and rotten that they don't see any way out to have that dream. So they're essentially going their own way, men and women. It's just most people don't recognize why they're feeling what they're feeling. Men on this aisle will blame feminism. Women on the other aisle will blame men. Nobody blames the politicians. Nobody blames the government. Nobody blames the society we're in. The system itself is the issue. The people at the top that depend on the system and control it to extract maximum profit over us at the bottom that feel this anxiety will never let the conversation turn to them. You understand what I'm saying here? The real conversation that should be had and the real power will finally come when men and women stand shoulder to shoulder in the streets protesting the system. Until then, enjoy becoming lonelier and lonelier, poorer and poorer with no way out.
So painful and difficult to be in this world that I'm just going to cast off any of it altogether and then retroactively come up with a lot of explanations that can justify why they didn't need to be in a relationship in any case. And for some people, that's true, but for most people, that's not.
Dating apps are clearly not, and as you say in your own words, previously aren't the only causal factor. So my question to you is, where did we go?
And this is a good point. Someone said, but poor countries have better relations between men and women. Yeah, do you know why? Because they're much closer to the natural system we had, where men and women depend on each other for survival. Those poor countries, they're still living off their land, sort of a mix of the agrarian lifestyle. They have plots of land that they're living off of. Do you see that they have the higher marriage rates, the higher rates of being happy? They're having kids still. Then when you transition into this capitalist system, what happens? Birth rates plummet. People stop having children completely. They become disconnected. Mental disease, rampant and exploding. Unhappiness all over the place. Depression explodes. Poor countries hardly have depression. People always smiling, happy with the little things they have. Here in the West, we got everything. Everything you could ever want. The lights come on whenever. The water turns on always. When you turn the faucet, it's always there, available. Yet we're more depressed here than people there. There you go. Point made.
Wrong. And how do we go right?
Okay, so I think challenges in the mating market are coming from many directions. One of the main ones that will be pertinent to the people that are listening is the increase in female achievement in education and employment. Now, about 50 years ago, when Title IX came in, there was a 13 percentage point swing in favor of men to women in universities. There were significantly more men than women.
What's Title IX?
It was an affirmative action policy that helped to get more women into higher education. 50 years later, 2023, it's a 15 percentage point swing between men and women in university in the other direction. There are 2 women for every 1 man at a 4-year US college degree, around about by 2030. Women on average between the ages of 21 and 29 earn £1,111 more than their male counterparts. Women are roughly twice as likely as men to say that they will value financial prospects in a partner. Around about 78% of women say that a stable job is something that is important for a partner to have, whereas around about only sort of 45% of men say the same thing. For a man to increase his rating on a 10-point scale by 2 points, he requires around about a 10-fold increase in his salary. For a woman to achieve the same 2-point improvement on a 10-point scale, her salary would need to increase by 10,000 times. My point being that women are concerned about a partner's socioeconomic status significantly more than men are. Now, you can start to see that if you have a world in which women are attending university at...
Yeah, you understand... We're really undergoing a sort of neo-feudalism where the capitalist class, I mean, you see it today, man. You see signs of neo-feudalism because, for example, the housing market has been bought up by companies. Most people failed to bid on a house because companies were coming in, undercutting them straight cash offers. We're concentrating wealth and power in the few, just like a feudalistic system. And then you're going to have the slave class, everybody else that owns no land, hardly any rights, etc. And then the system will collapse on itself because in the same way Rome fell. Rome fell in the same manner where wealth started getting concentrated in the ownership class. They were buying land more and more and more and more land. Wealth got concentrated just like it is now in a small percentage of society. They stopped caring about everybody else. Everybody else got further pushed in the outskirts of Rome. They had less land to farm, less production, and then the collapse of the empire happened on itself, which led to exactly food riots, hedonism, a complete degradation of the social fabric because of how much wealth was concentrated at the top, which is what's happening today in America. We're watching it right now. This is neo-feudalism that's reared its ugly head in, quote, modernity. It's the same thing. Now, most of the homes that are owned are going to be owned by companies that are renting them out. You're going to be a renter for life. It's already started and it's only getting worse. This is why I tell you guys, and I always say move overseas financially. And what I mean by financial freedom, I mean owning a house, owning land. The ticket to freedom is ownership. Once you cross into the ownership category, you have freed yourself. Women and all that other shit, dude, is a distant 500th place. That's just the cherry on top. Chris, thanks, brother. You're on point with class war. I say it all the time. Only thing they want us is to breed more, to feed the capital machine, to consume more. Yeah, we're cattle. At the bottom here, we're cattle. That's a perfect way to put it. Those at the top look at us as straight up labor and resources, like you do when you have animals. Just tag our ears with a number, and that's all you are to these people.
High rates, they are achieving more success in employment, at least in that sort of 21 to 29 range, which is when most people are perhaps looking for potential partners. And yet, the socioeconomic status of a partner to a woman is a big determinant of their level of attraction. You can start to see how this imbalance could cause a problem. Similarly, when we talk about education, a man with a master's degree on Tinder gets 90% more right swipes than a man with a bachelor's degree. So for all of the guys that are considering going and getting a master's degree, even if you think it's going to be useless, at least accept the fact that you get 90% more right swipes for the rest of your life, or just lie about your master's. I don't know. All of this rolled together describes something called hypergamy, which is the female tendency to date up and across. On average, women want to date a man who is as educated or as employed as they are. Now, in a world in which, quite rightly, women have finally been able to achieve parity in education and employment and status and have independence and not be financially reliant on their partner, all the rest of it, that's great for them. But it does cause some challenges for their dating. And this is what I've called the tall girl problem. So everybody knows what it's like to have a girlfriend who is 6 foot without heels. You go, if you want to wear heels, you're looking at professional athletes, because on average, women want to date a man who is at least as tall or a little bit taller than they are. So as women rise up through their own competence hierarchy in education and employment, they further shorten down the potential pool of eligible men that are as educated or more educated and as employed or more employed than they are. This is a challenge. This is just a straight up imbalance, right? What this causes is a very large group of men toward the bottom of this distribution to be essentially invisible to women. It causes a very large number of women, an increasing cohort, to compete for an increasingly small group of turbo-chad super performers at the top. These guys, the super high value guys, have a wealth of options, so they are commitment averse. Why would they decide to sit down with one girl for the rest of time when they have this wealth of options, which can cause them to use and discard many of these women, which then causes most of these women to resent men overall. And then the guys that were forgotten at the bottom that say, well, hang on a second, I didn't use and discard you. I haven't even been seen by you. No, all men are whatever it might be, right? That they are users and abusers, that we don't need them, that we're all of the good men at, et cetera, et cetera. There's a big group of men that feel like they are good men that are invisible. There's a big portion of women who have finally managed to achieve educational.
Well, it's important to note there when he says they're a bunch of good men. I feel they're being passed over. The key here is good through a woman's eyes is different than what a good man is through a man's eyes, okay? If you're not attractive, ergo invisible to women, you're not a good man. You're less than, you're invisible. You're a creep. You're a loser. That's why when a woman sees a man hit on her that's not attractive, or that she's not attractive to in particular, he's seen as a creep, disgusting, and how dare he even think he could ask me out. This is why they have that attitude of the audacity of this ugly guy to ask me out, thinking he can get me. That's their natural aversion to these, quote, good men, okay? You're only a good man when she's attracted to you. That's the brutal truth. Or you're only a good man as long as she benefits from you. You have utility that you can offer her in some form or another.
And employment and independence that are chasing after a smaller group of guys. These guys are commitment averse. I don't think it's necessarily good for them either. It's the child with the ice cream, right? Like guys being able to keep it in their pants when there's a lot of options on the table is going to be difficult for them too. This is one of the main drivers. This tall girl problem is a massive change, I think, in the dating dynamics.
It obviously begs a question, Chris, which is, if everything you've said is objectively correct and spot on and supported by the data, then how does, if I make Chris Williamson the prime minister or president of the world and I say your first job is to fix this challenge, what do you do?
The first thing that you don't do is row back women's education and employment. And this is one of the problems with this discussion, right? The things that I've just said there are borne out in Pew Research data, Morgan Stanley results. Like, these are incontrovertible facts, right? They are there. And any girl that is listening who earns more than £50,000 a year and has got a master's or above level education and is toward their late 30s or toward their late 20s or in their 30s knows this problem. You know the fact that you are struggling to find a man that you feel is eligible for you, right? That needs to be out there. The problem that happens around this discourse is that it posits men and women as adversaries and competitors.
I think the solution's pretty simple, honestly. You have to educate the population. Education is key, period. It's too late. And we shouldn't even roll back women's rights. Having a double-sized workforce, not only is it militarily beneficial, as you could see with America during World War II, but economically too. You get a very strong overall economy when women enter the workforce as well. It's just manpower in general. But education is lacking. Education in what makes a man and a woman valuable individually. That needs to come back. Then the government has to simply, and I say simply because it really could be if they wanted to, institute something like, what could you say? Whether probably through legislation, something like, say, tax breaks for having a kid. And I mean hard tax breaks. Make having a kid highly beneficial because society as a whole benefits. So give people heavy tax breaks to have kids in a nuclear family. So if you break up a family and you create a broken home, you lose a lot of your benefits. So financial incentives for people to stay together and to start families, heavy financial incentives. Then besides financial incentives, what else could you do? Affordability of things like housing. The most important thing people need is to have a roof over their heads in order to have a stable home. You don't need to worry about losing your home, worry about moving all over the place. You need to stabilize housing for people. Enough with the luxury apartments. Stop building goddamn apartments no one wants to live in anyway. Start building middle-class style homes and neighborhoods again. Do not allow companies to invest in housing. Housing should be restricted to homes for people, not investments for investors and companies. So now we solve the housing crisis. Now we incentivize people to have kids, and it should start working in that manner. And then you educate the people so that they understand why it's important and the benefits of having children, how men view women, how women view men. And then you solve the last portion, I guess, for the puzzle to be solved is income. The simplest way I've heard it to make it even again is the ratio of CEO pay needs to be capped. I think the CEO, I just read an article, the CEO of Microsoft has a pay rate. He just got paid $200 million. $200 million to one man. He has an 800 to 1 pay ratio to the lowest paid worker in Microsoft. That needs to be 800 at most, and probably, 100 at most, and probably lowered to 50, and then ultimately like 20. These companies are rolling in hundreds of billions of dollars in profit, dead money that doesn't go back into the economy. It goes back into feeding the beast. It goes back into these rich people and it doesn't trickle down to the rest of us. They just buy yachts and spend money overseas, and nobody in the local community sees that money. What they need to do is make it so that they have a 50 to 1 cap. You want to make $200 million, talk about excess? That's fine. 50 to 1 cap. You're never going to be poor. That's still a ton of goddamn money. And it brings up the rest of us to be able to afford everything instead of collapsing like the Roman Empire when wealth gets concentrated into one pool of society and makes everybody else destitute. And they barely pay tax. Yeah, of course. They have loopholes for everything. This is how you solve the problem. But the shit I said doesn't bode well for those at the top that are currently in control. That sounds like you're taking away money from them. That sounds like you're taking away control from them. That sounds like you're making it even for your children to compete with their progeny. Sorry. It's competition, man. They try to make this shit seem like it's impossible to fix. Like, holy shit, these are daunting problems. How are we ever going to fix it? That's just them gaslighting the shit out of us when you see it on the news. How are we going to solve homelessness? Oh my God, it's such a daunting task. We've been failing. No, you've been washing money in those $1 million programs that they do in San Francisco. That's all money being washed. You're spending millions of dollars building a bunch of huts. It's a joke, man. Anybody with half a brain can see this shit. My true, thanks for the 20, bro. Nobody is even suggesting to roll back progress. The problem is she feels the guys below her until gals accurately assess their SMV. It will continue to be a free-for-all. Again, you're blaming women. This is an economic issue systemically. When 6 gals settles with a 4 or a 6 or a 9 settles with a 4, yeah, none of that matters. I'm telling you right now. If everybody got paid correctly, everybody could afford kids, everybody could put a roof under their head. When you solve for all the things I've just said, people's standards will relax far more. People are forced to be almost like predatory, hyper selective today because how brutal it is to live in anything other than, I need a man that makes a ton of money. Can't start a family on $60,000 a year salary. You got to have excess today to live somewhat even with the quality of life your parents or your grandparents had. Do you understand? This is why the game is getting hyper focused and brutal for both sides. True, thanks again. But to suggest a gal acknowledges and her truism is an insult if she can't overcome, again, bro, you're not seeing it deep enough. This is what the problem is. It will continue to suck out their religion to some degree, forced monogamy, and assertive mating. Nothing new. Yeah, this is a far deeper problem.
Of each other, right? As enemies. This means that worthwhile compassion, which is needed to both women and men. If you're a woman who has gone through your education, you've dedicated yourself to achieving a degree.
Yeah, you have to understand that this whole 4, 5, 6 is getting with 2, 3s, it all stems from the indoctrination of social media. It stems from the economic pressure you're facing, all of which at the core root is a broken system that's not allowing people to live out their true selves. Okay, this is just like a symptom of all the stress and the anxiety that women have to hyper select for only the top men in order to have a decent life and not feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck and struggling in poverty. All the stuff, same shit men feel. How the hell men are struggling with the anxiety and the stress of how the hell am I supposed to be affording a family today on the income I have when I make relatively to my father back in his time less money when you factor in inflation, when you factor in how low wages have stagnated over the years. We have less than our prior generations had. You can't go to college and pay it off on a server job anymore, working part-time like Grandpappy did. That's done for. You're graduating with a mortgage on your back that you can't even discard in court. You can't bankrupt. You can't go bankrupt and discard that shit. It follows you for life. These are the real issues, man. Nobody wants to talk about this shit. Everybody's stuck on the same old bullshit. Man, I'm delusional. Man, I ain't shit. What it brings to the table. All that stuff's cute, yes. And on the individual level, yes. We expect people to have enough self-awareness to understand why they make these stupid NPC arguments. This is why we call them NPCs, because they're victims and they don't even know it. They're perpetuating their own victimhood. They're setting themselves up, example women, to hit the wall and be lonely. Men are also victims because they're setting themselves up to be alone forever, never starting a family. Quote, I'm going my own way. That's you failing in the system, bro. That's the brutal truth. Men going their own way is the female version of I'm buying cats and rather die alone. That's what it really is. Your grandpappy before him, great-great-grandpappy, all had women, all had kids, all had a family, all under one roof, except you. Why? Because the economic system we're under.
You know, your mother's generation wasn't able to achieve this, and you're the first person that's maybe gone to uni or got a bachelor's or got a master's or got a PhD, and then you spend some time in a career grinding away and you now earn 150 grand a year. You think, right, I'm 31, I'd love to settle down. This would be amazing for me. Where are all of the men at? Hang on a second. And what you realize is that not only now are you competing with all of the other increasing cohort of women that are high achievers with status, employment, and education, but you're also competing with a 21-year-old barista who still lives at home with her parents for this small cohort of guys. That requires sympathy for women, okay? That is not a good position for women to be in. At the same time, this huge cohort of sexless men, 30% of men haven't had sex in the last year. 50% of men say that they are not looking for a relationship. You are a man. You have been through your 20s. You know the power of the male sex drive between the ages of 18 and 30. Can you imagine getting yourself into a situation where you say, I'm not bothered about pursuing women? That is an unbelievably extreme statement for men to make. And they're self-identifying as this in Pew Research data. This isn't on incel forums. This is Pew Research. 50% of men aren't looking for a relationship.
When they say aren't looking for a relationship, do they mean I'm not looking for a woman or I'm not looking for commitment?
And not actively pursuing any kind of interaction with women.
Oh, shit.
Casual included.
What?
50%.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you...
Yeah, there you go. I guess it was from a channel called Diary of a CEO Clips. Diary of a CEO featuring Chris Williamson. Yeah. It's a dirty game, man. So I keep pushing for you guys going overseas. Most people see the surface level like, yeah, foreign women are better, which, you know, In many metrics, they are, for, of course, starting a family, the conservative mindset, all that. They haven't been poisoned with, again, our poisoned, broken system here. But it's so much deeper than that, dude. It's the financial freedom.